Welcome to our first official episode of Informed in 10, a new monthly podcast series where we'll be covering topics across all areas of the sports and dietary supplement industry over the course of 10 questions. From new regions welcoming the Informed certification program, to interviews with athletes, brands, and various sporting bodies, Informed in 10 will be your one-stop shop for all things informed. On today's first episode, Paul Klinger, Inform's Head of Innovation and Global Market Development, will be speaking with Grant House, Team USA athlete, NIL advocate, and lead plaintiff in the landmark House versus NCAA class action lawsuit, which secured a near $2.8 billion settlement in June 2025 to compensate athletes for name, image, and likeness rights. Without further ado, Paul, you can take it away.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that. And thank you, Grant, for joining us in today's podcast. I know you're extremely busy. You have a lot going on between your training. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I have a few topics that I'd like to go over with you. But before we begin, maybe you can just give us an overview of your background, who you are. Obviously you're swimming, what events you're training for right now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate being welcomed onto the show and welcomed into the Informed community as well, Paul. I'm really excited to be here. Informed has been a big part of my life as an athlete ever since I was really 14 years old. So really excited to be here. But right now I'm training for the 2028 LA Games. We have a World Championships qualifier coming up this year in 2026 in October. The meet will be in December, but America is having a selection meet in October right now. So I'm training away in Tempe, Arizona, out here at Arizona State University, where I've been at for 8 years now. And also on the side, I have responsibilities as a strength and performance coach for youth athletes, as well as Major League Baseball players too in their off season. So Arizona is a big hotbed for spring training, and I get to help a lot of the athletes out during their time out here as they prepare to head into spring training and take care of them and make sure we're improving their performance in the off season that they have after October, ideally for the athletes with the playoffs, and so on and so forth into the season with helping them out throughout their 162 game season. That's quite the marathon plus out there. So right now I'm doubling as a coach and athlete, and also some private swim lessons on the side while I'm going throughout my days. But a huge part of everything I'm doing right now is being an NIL advocate and athlete advocate for college sports. It's something I believe in a lot, and it's a huge aspect that is shaping my life and will shape the rest of my life for sure.
Wow, you are a very, very busy man. A lot going on. That's pretty impressive. You've competed at the highest level, obviously, not through high school, through college, the Olympic trials. You're training again for the next Olympics. You're in a sport where winning comes down to the narrowest of margins, and it's fractions of a second make a difference. Obviously, training is really important, but what outside of training do you see as equally important? Things like rest, nutrition, specifically, sports nutrition or any nutrition products, and how does that help your training?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I really think it's not talked about a lot. But the time outside of training is where athletes and anyone actually improves. It's where your performance adapts. It's where your body's physiology, it's where your body performs better and learns how to perform better. So I always make the analogy, if you go to practice, that's great. But after practice, if you don't eat anything, if you don't sleep at all in the night, like take the extreme, and then try to show up at the next practice, you wouldn't be very good at all. No one would be, whether it's Superman or whether it's Joe Schmo coming out of the rec gym. That's a constant. So working backwards from there on the worst scale, the extreme, to the best scale of doing everything you possibly can, you understand how important nutrition and rest are, because it's actually in that time away from practice. You need to work hard in the sessions you have, but it's so vital. Everyone trains hard at the highest levels. What separates athletes a lot isn't just how hard they work. I believe it's a combination of working smarter and harder, not just one or the other. I've done both in my careers, and I understand now it's a fine line in between handling both. But it's how disciplined you are outside the pool, the track, or even the field. Recovery, sleep, hydration, nutrition, those aren't just add-ons for an athlete, really. They're performance multipliers. And like you said, those are what make the, the razor thin margins more attainable. When we're talking about 0.3% better differences in sports like track or field, or throwing the ball an extra yard or an extra 10 yards, or having the stamina and the endurance and power to last an entire game or race, those are absolutely vital, especially when you're trying to put 365 days of health, strength, and performance together for an athlete's calendar.
Well, yeah, I had the pleasure of working with an athlete many years ago in a previous career life, and at the time he had just entered college, a um, very elite athlete, but at the time when he entered college, he was eighth in the world within his sport. He was a decathlete. And I worked for a nutrition company previously, and so we worked with him on his nutrition, and he ended up going from eighth in the world to I think he was from eighth in the world to a silver medal in the I think it was the Beijing Olympics, and then after that he won his gold medal. But
Wow.
he completely attributed that to his lack of knowledge with understanding nutrition, what he was putting into his body, and how that helps recovery, to going from eighth in the world to eventually winning that gold medal in just a few years. At what point in your career did you realize how important nutrition was, and when did you begin using sports nutrition products?
Yeah, that's for me. Fortunately, I can say it started pretty early in my development. It kind of started right at my first instance of an exposure to like national team development. I had a zone select camp for USA Swimming, which is very important for youth development too. I was about 14 years old, 14, 15 years old, just entering high school into a new chapter of my development in my career. And I met a dietitian named Dawn Weatherwax. She works out in around Cincinnati, Ohio, and I worked with her my entire high school time. But I never would have met her if I hadn't been at that clinic, that camp that USA Swimming had hosted for us, some of the most successful athletes in the Midwest zone. And so it's been very important to my development. I understood finally how important it was to recover from each session, to recover overnight, what you were eating. And the biggest analogy I was always taught and was told at that point was, you don't take a Ferrari on the F1 circuit and give it unleaded gas. It needs the highest octane fuel ever. And why should you be treating your body any differently? So when I heard that, I was like, yeah, I need to be fueling my body like a Ferrari, because that's what I wanted to go, whether it's a 50-meter freestyle or a mile for some people, whatever it is, you need to be making sure that you're nourishing your body with the proper nutrients and the proper ingredients that are going to fuel you to success. And it's such an underrated aspect at a younger age that typically people integrate it later in their careers, which is better late than never. But it's something that can be such a bigger part of Olympic level athletes' development, and especially starting at a younger age. I was fortunately able to have that happen to me.
Yeah, and I think as a drug tested athlete, obviously, when you're entering into the world of nutrition, people have described it as the wild west. I think a lot of that has to do with, there's just a lot of unknown. There's a lack of knowledge. There's a lot of products out there. Um, what resources did you have as an athlete? Obviously, you mentioned Dawn, and by the way, I know Dawn very well. She's
Great.
a wonderful nutritionist. So, uh, but what resources did you have from educating you and kind of navigating yourself in the world of sports nutrition, dietary supplements, understanding the issue of banned substances?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a lagging component. As an athlete, luckily I was very influenced and impacted by Don's talk with all the athletes there. I think I was one of the many that were moved by it that day. And fortunately, it really gripped me and how I look at my whole life of performance, and being very science driven, being very physiology driven, like how the body can perform, whether it's mentally or physically, even emotionally. I'm just so enamored with. I'm very interested in it. So it always was very easy for me to want to learn more. But the resources were always, a little bit lacking. I think USA Swimming did a really great job as much as they could. Like in that same conversation we had with Don, they talked about the risk of contaminations with supplements. And luckily at that point in my career, I was just focused on nutrition, not supplementation. But I had no idea there was this whole world of third-party certifications that actually mattered. And so the resources and educations are kind of, we're told that, hey, this is a concern, you should be on the lookout or be careful. But it's never really ingrained or educated as to why. I think we're doing a lot better now, but the resources at the time was kind of just a pamphlet, a handout, a packet, no tangible understanding of what could happen if you have a contaminated supplement and you're taking for performance, ideally to help yourself, but it could end up even ending your career or hurting your performance as well.
Yeah, and I think, you bring up a good point too. I mean, especially when you have resources like if you have, Team USA or going to college, you have nutritionists, you had Dawn Weatherwax helping you out. I think a lot of young people, especially, kids coming out of high school early on where they don't have access to nutritionists, they don't have this. When did you first become aware of Informed Sport or third-party certifications, you personally?
Hmm.
At what
Yeah,
level?
yeah, absolutely. I think for me, going on to that point, especially at that stage too, it was just you get lists, you get warnings, but navigating the supplement industry is far more complicated, as you know very, very well.
Yeah.
And that's why third-party certification matters a lot, and why athletes should take it as more of a priority, because my first true exposure to it was at one of the highest levels you can reach in the junior circuit, which was the Junior World Championships in Singapore, and in 2015. And I went there to represent Team USA for the 4x200 meter freestyle relay, and our relay won gold. We set the junior world record. It was an incredible night, and then we all got tested for a urine sample for drug testing and contamination. So we went back there, and I understood that was a possibility, but you just kind of always hear about it as a younger athlete. You never experience it in age group, AAU, or in your grade schools at all. I've never heard of that either. But I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know if I needed to clear anything with anyone. So I was very anxious. I was very worried for no reason, just that it was the first experience. And it took me quite frankly 3 hours to go to the bathroom, because I was a little I was a little nervous.
Yeah.
So it was a new experience, and that's really when I became aware of third party certification. Like, I think I had taken some ibuprofen like 2 weeks before, and they're like, "Do you remember what dosage it was? Do you remember when you take it, what day?" And I was like, "No, like I didn't know I had to keep a track of that stuff." Or I took some Zyrtec the other day for allergies. Like, I don't know what brand it is. I don't know this. I don't know how much dosage or what strength it is. And what stood out to me was just the awareness that you had to have, and understanding the difference between a supplement brand saying something's safe and the confidence and the reassurance you get when you know it's proved.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you though, Olympic athletes and anybody going through what you're going through, the testing is insane. I know, the athlete that I spoke about earlier, he was tested 17 times in 1 year. And at one point, they woke him up at 7 in the morning to take his test, and then they came back the next day. It was back to back, and that's how they were approaching it. And so yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and I can imagine just the stress that you're going through and just thinking about everything that you put in your body. And, looking back with that, is there anything you wish you were taught sooner, regarding supplement risk, drug testing, or, just the decision making on your own nutrition strategy? There's things you wish you knew earlier, or do you feel that you had the resources available to you along the way?
Yeah, I think I had a lot of great resources along the way, but I'd say there's two things. I'd say one on a nutritional component, one on a supplement component. I think for both, it would be you don't have to do everything at once. It's a very, very big field of how to get better and how to eat better, how to supplement better, what athletes actually need, which supplements. And that takes a good amount of research and time. And luckily, the world is so connected by technology now. You can kind of grab that at your fingertips at any moment. Like, what helps me as a 200 meter freestyle swimmer where my race lasts 1 minute and ideally 42 seconds? what supplements would be the best for me. And then you kind of get a list, and then you kind of see which ones are informed choice certified, and then you can kind of go from there. Nutritionally as well, it doesn't have to be a complete rearranging of everything you're eating. If you're eating Chef Boyardee, you don't have to just completely, every day of the week, you don't have to completely throw that out. Just make substitutions and alterations along the way. Like start to make those steps. I always make the analogy of a stair stepper or a stairwell, like one step, then the other, then the other. You're not just jumping up 20 steps at once. So make those gradual steps. I wish someone on the supplement front had explained the risk more. Not fear, but risk, because I feel like at first it was like, okay, so-and-so told me that this is okay to take. Like, I think it's okay. Like, but what's really the worry? And there's a lot of supplements out there that, even if they're just made in the same factory or the same manufacturing plant, if that other product that they make from the company isn't safe and regulated, you could still test positive. And that actually happened to a couple swimmers since the 2000s, where there's cross-contamination with their products. So for Team USA, it was very real, very visceral. I even covered it in my graduate degree class of sports law, the issues with that, and how that can be such a serious issue. But you just hear it, just be careful. But you don't understand how supply chains work, how easy it is to unintentionally ingest something banned, or maybe you're with your team or in the dugout at a baseball game or a football game, and you're in the locker room and your teammate's taking something like a powder, and you're like, oh, he's taking it, he's good, I'll take it too. Education should start earlier, especially now with NIL and these supplement companies wanting to partner with them. So I think that, education earlier and explaining, well, why is it a risk? What am I risking? Especially at a young age, really the rest of your athletic career, if that matters to you.
No, I think, you hit the nail on the head. And, you said something in there about contamination. And I think a lot of times, even education, it just goes to, well, know what you're putting in your body, do your homework, make sure you're not, because, using a product that might contain a banned substance, but contamination is a big problem. And, you might be looking at a label and thinking that you're putting something safe in your body and potentially could still fail a drug test because of cross-contamination. And that's where I think, really that education and understanding about third-party certification and what that means helps. I think it's getting better. As you said, technology is helping. I think there's a lot more awareness, a lot more nutritionists out there trying to reach out to not just collegiate athletes or professional athletes, but even down to the high school level. So I think there's definitely a lot of strides that's being made there. You mentioned NIL. I'd like to shift gears a little bit with you. You became a central figure in the legal challenge that ultimately became NIL. The changing the rules within college sports. What was the moment where you realized this wasn't just a personal issue, but really a problem within the whole system with athletes, collegiate athletes? Because I know, there's, athletes, previous to this, if somebody bought you a hamburger, you could lose your eligibility. So, it was very serious. I just loved to get your insights on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's one of my favorite ones. It really started in my first month and my first exposure into college at the dorms. There was one of our dorm mates. He was also an athlete on another team at ASU, and he made music. I think he would agree at the time it was not very good music, but we all kind of laughed about it and enjoyed his good music when he created something neat and creative. Because my teammate and I on the swim team, we were not musically inclined to produce music at that point. But he made a comment. He's like, even if I make the worst music ever and someone wants to buy it, I can make $1,000 off of it. And you guys made a song better than Justin Timberlake, like a hit from Justin Timberlake. You couldn't even make anything off of it, because he was trying to be a walk-on the next season, and it wasn't on the team. And we were already on the team and on scholarship at Arizona State Swim and Dive. So that just resonated with me really differently when I saw my teammates in a different light after that, and all the sports generating revenue for institutions, but having zero autonomy and control of receiving any of that, but ultimately choosing to give 4 more years of their life into a sport, into a game, into mastering a craft. And it stopped being about me the moment I realized all those hundreds of thousands of athletes were in that same position. Being a swimmer, I'd already have exposure at that point of competing internationally. I'd been competing on national televised events, ESPN, streaming. So I kind of understood. I was like, well, this even applies to swimming now, and the Olympics being swimming having the biggest viewership almost every 4 years. Kind of made me think a little bit about what became of fairness and the future generations, because like we talked about, technology is only going to keep advancing, viewership's only going to keep increasing. So why shouldn't everyone be generating and benefiting from this themselves instead of just for the universities?
No, I think it's a great point. I think that's the thing a lot of people don't always understand. They think it was a sponsorship. Somebody gave them money to endorse a product, but to your example, it could have been recording that song and not being able to earn any revenue from that. It was very timely for something like this to happen. And obviously, taking on a system like this, it comes with a lot of personal risk. And I know that you've had, your own, challenges that you've had, taking this on. What values or principles made it important for you to take on that risk, even when you knew that the outcome of this was uncertain?
Yeah, I think, a big reason of why taking the risk came to me from just understanding what I wanted to be in this world. Fortunately, in my high school development, in my 4 years there, at a very, very renowned and very proud to be in relation and connected to St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, Ohio, a Jesuit institute, and one of our mottos was men to serve others. We were an all-guys school, but men and women to serve others for the Jesuit message, and really serving others and how we can help amplify their life, how we can amplify their light and bring positive impacts into others around us. And taking the risk, I just looked at it, leadership isn't comfortable. I came to ASU to lead and create a national championship program. I felt like it could become that. It was not that at any point. We had just been cut. The program had just been cut 10 years before I got there. And I saw every reason for it to succeed. So I wanted to take a leadership on the team. I wanted to take a leadership. I was the president of SAC at ASU. I wanted to take it a step further and help the Pac-12. So I went from a team of 60 people to a school of 600, and then to the Pac-12 of 6,000 people at least. And so each of these steps, I wanted to be a leader, and I knew that wouldn't be comfortable. I knew there would be a good amount of backlash. Maybe with the lawsuit, I didn't realize how much at first there was, but I also knew that staying silent wasn't going to help that. Anything in life that I've had, if you speak up for it, you at least find out one way or the other. But I looked at the long-term change that it could have, and sometimes I believe the way I was raised, fortunately, by my parents and by my especially exposure to the Jesuit culture, integrity costs you something up front sometimes. Living a moral and ethical life is very valuable to me. It's a huge one of my values in life, and making sure I'm speaking up for the right things. But, progress requires someone to step forward, and at that point, no one had, and I was the person to have that courage to take that first step forward, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very happy with that. I didn't understand all the backlash that would come with it, I will admit that, but I'm very happy that I did, and it just took someone with courage to do it.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I think NIL opened up some real opportunities for these collegiate athletes, but also came with it new pressures, new responsibilities, risks, and athletes are now having to navigate through brands, brand sponsorships, agents, products. And from your experience, what was it like for you when you first had to start navigating through this? Because a lot of times these are very young kids, and all of a sudden there's a lot of, not every athlete is getting big contracts or things along those lines. Some of it could be, just something very simple, but still it's a lot to take on, not just from your sport, but you're also going to school, but you're also having to deal with these other things. What was your experience like dealing with that for the first time?
My experience dealing with NIL for the first time was, one, personally very exciting, but I also understood being in the landscape and being such a prominent figure. Boy, it was overwhelming for a lot of instances, for sure. Because as opportunity increases, so does vulnerability, and so does responsibility as well. And like you mentioned, for the professional athletes, they're typically 23, 24 or older, in the NFL, MLB, NHL. all different ages too, of when they're really, getting those big contracts or big brand deals or sponsorship opportunities. So, the responsibility and the development happens a little bit earlier. Athletes are being asked to kind of develop a little bit earlier at 18 and take more responsibilities in their life. And I think that's a really good aspect. I think we go to college to equip ourselves with those skills. So obviously, a lot of people think go to college to learn or to play sports, but really it's an environment to equip ourselves with the tools for the rest of our lives, ideally. And so suddenly you're approached by, like you said, brands, agents, advisors, and most athletes aren't trained in business or compliance or risk management, so it's a great opportunity to learn with them. One aspect that I've been really eager to do is, partnering with a brand like Morgan Stanley or reaching out to someone like that where we can have that financial literacy. We can create programs for athletes specifically that are getting inundated with these opportunities more often and more at an earlier basis than maybe when you're graduating or going into a job after an internship and you're understanding taxes and stuff like that. But as the opportunities increase, so does the responsibility. And so I thought it was exciting. It made me feel like I was moving towards like the remainder of my life and building myself up in that regard and learning a lot of skills outside of sport. So I thought it was really, really fun, really exciting, and still is. But I definitely recognize how overwhelming and just off the guardrails all these regulations were, because it really was just a split decision in about 2 weeks. And then NIL was available.
Yeah, and I think with with NIL, obviously athletes now own their own name and image, but in the world that we live in third-party testing and certification and drug-tested athletes, anti-doping rules still apply. So
Absolutely.
so these athletes are being exposed to brands who their products may not be tested, they may not be certified, but they're going to these athletes wanting them to use or endorse their products. Certifications like ours, we're here to help there. We're doing everything that we can from an education standpoint. We have partnerships with organizations like Players Only, anything that we can do to try to help educate and ensure that any products that athletes are using have been tested or third party certified. Do you think the sport itself has caught up in terms of protecting athletes or educating the athletes, especially when it comes to NIL? Because it just feels like there's this gap of, here's an opportunity, for you to potentially earn some money, endorsing a product, but it's not necessarily being, driven by, the NCAA, for example. What do you feel like they're adequately being protected, or do you think we have a bit of ways to go?
I definitely think, especially what you mentioned with the gap in NIL, we have a long ways to go with athlete protection. I think I was seeing we were making strides as I was exposed to it very early on, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast. And I don't think we've fully gotten equipped with athlete protection. Supplements are one of the biggest vulnerabilities, especially right now in college. Athletes are trying to find the tip of the spear, the finding out of their sword to swing at their competition. So they're looking for every edge they can use. And now with athletes in their name, image, and likeness, a brand can reach out to them. Hey, can you take this? Hey, can you use this? Hey, can you post this and say you use your game? Whether it's $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever it is. Some people, $100 is going to be the biggest payday they've ever gotten. Some $100 isn't going to be worth their time. And so now with all these, one of the biggest industries in the world, supplements, it's more important than ever, especially for college athletes, because the reality is, I know I mentioned it, competing at really high levels of getting tested, but the reality really shines when you understand that every university across the entire United States has a randomized drug testing for random athletes at their university. So once a month at Arizona State and any university, in addition to that, the school will select random athletes of their 600 at ASU to get drug tested. And if you're tested on that day and you took something that has a contaminated supplement, or your supplement is banned and not regulated for sport, you could lose your eligibility in college, and you lose your eligibility from the school. You could lose your scholarship. You could be cut, and then you could lose your integrity for any school to want to sign you as well. So when I look at my cupboard and every supplement in my cabinet right now, it's such a breath of release and such a big reassurance that, I've been looking at the Informed logo and symbol since I was 14, 15. And it's something that I know and I can trust, and that especially with NIL, risk has increased because the brands are approaching athletes daily. Some are credible, but most are not. And it's so simple to understand, like a company with Informed. For me, I just look for the symbol. I look if that product is going to benefit my performance or my physiology, my body chemistry, and then kind of see if I should take it, talk to a dietitian, and then make the decision to start implementing it in my training schedule. But programs like Informed Choice are a very big part of the solution, because I don't think 18, 19, 20-year-olds are taking the consideration, because I know I've heard it before from my teammates. I haven't been tested before. Why would I be tested now? I can take this because I haven't been tested before, and I'm not going to get tested, or I'm not good enough. I'm not going to get tested. No, they can choose to test you at any point, and it's just one easier step to make that reassurance and make that confidence that you're taking a certified product, and one that's proven to help you as well.
Yeah. And I think, you come from a really unique position as well. Obviously being an athlete yourself, being drug tested, navigating for what you navigated, but also just, advising athletes from an NIL point of view and what to look out for. Now, you actually you actually speak at universities and schools, and, tell us a little bit about that from an education standpoint, because it just feels like your message would be extremely valuable, coming from you, than maybe from somebody who hasn't been in that athlete's shoes. It just feels like you've got a real powerful message there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate acknowledgement of that. Yeah, it's a lot of hats and a lot of experiences I've gotten to have in life. As the athlete, now as an advocate for athletes overall, and regardless of the sport, and also as a coach. When I was an intern at Exos, a very prominent facility out here in Phoenix, Arizona, and across the world, we're making their post-workout nutrition. We're making their smoothies. So it's vital to make sure every product in that room is certified for sport and safe for the athletes to take, because if you pour something in there, or if athlete asks you to put something in there, I had that happen a couple times, you have to say no, really, because you can't cross-contaminate. We have to be sure and very selective of what we're putting into all of those ingredients and all those mixes for the athletes, because what someone can take in one sport might not be the same. But for me, going to these universities now, I just went to Marquette University last week, earlier this month, and I'm going to be going to University of Pennsylvania and Villanova as well. It's understanding that what's going on right now isn't, we can't be complacent with that, and it's not sufficient. We've taken this giant kick at the door, and we've knocked the door down, but now we need to start walking through it and clear institutional guidance with universities, and create regulations for athletes to follow better. Because right now, I know you said it with the supplement, but for NIL too, where it's been the Wild West. There's people that can get judges out of their pocket of alumni associations that can certify if someone has eligibility or not. We just have been seeing that in basketball recently. But a cultural shift needs to happen, where we're empowering these next generation of leaders, the 21, 22, 23, these L1s, L2, L3 students in law school. The cultural shift to help sport advance, so we can have things, NIL regulation on only safe for sport, informed choice, informed sport supplements can be an option for signing a sponsorship with, and not being reactive to, here's $100, go take XYZ product that has all these banned substances in it. So the regulations on it are really important for me to echo of, we need to create regulations, we need to create guardrails, we need to help empower these athletes to ask better questions before signing deals or using products, because they don't know any better. And quite frankly, for some people in sports, this is their main path. Like $100 to them can feed their family for a couple nights, or $1,000 could feed their family for a week. I'm very grateful and honored that my parents supported me enough that that wasn't my reality, but I know that's a reality for a lot of athletes out there. So
Yeah.
going to these universities, empowering a lot of people at 27 now, 27 years young, seeing the 22, 21, 23-year olds there that are in these positions to be the next leaders, really
Hmm.
echoing how important it is because I was that person and I know how important my leadership has been.
That's great. That's great. You may have answered my next question here, but if you could give one piece of advice to a young athlete who's trying to navigate their training, performance, the opportunity in front of them, the pressures that they're feeling today, what would that be?
Man, that's a great question. All encompassing. Um, that's a great aspect. It's I always think about talking to my younger self sometimes, or like my nieces. I have two nieces as well. What I would want to tell them. Um, I would say a couple things. I think move move slowly and ask good questions. Choose partners very carefully, whether it's as a coach as a partnership, a university as a partnership, all these different things. You know, one thing I always tell recruits is envision your worst day possible, and you're waking up to go to practice. Where do you want to go? And for me, I didn't want to get up and deal with 10 inches of snow. I didn't want to deal with gray skies. I wanted to go to clear skies, blue, not a cloud in sight, 80 degrees. I knew if I had that on my worst day, life life can only be so bad. And so little things like that along the way, like opportunities will come and go. PR will rise and fall. I'm a testament to that with media attention and slandering along the way. But your reputation and eligibility are very fragile. And I'm a big believer that the truth will shine bright at the end and the light will be revealed. And that's what I think. You know, I spent 5 years being a media beating bag, I would say. And then 5 years after that, you know, now in 2026, starting to get a lot more opportunities, speaking with universities, having a chance to have two-way conversations. So protect your integrity before you just chase performance at all costs. I've seen the detriment to that. I've experienced it too. And, you know, performance is earned, and you need to have your trust protected. You can't just openly, blindly agree to everything anymore. You can't openly or blindly agree to trust everyone. But just ask questions. That's a big one for me, whether it's this supplement, this school, this practice, this plan, whatever it may be. That would be one of the biggest things for athletes is take those marginal steps of improvement. Don't feel like you have to take those 20 steps on the stairwell like we talked about earlier, and make sure that you're keeping your integrity with what you want to and asking questions along the way. If you don't think something makes sense, speak up and ask a question. If you need clarification, speak up and ask a question, because that's how I got to the position I am in now. And even as a leader, asking my teammates, asking people that I have as mentors questions along the way helps me help other people a lot more than I really ever expected. I thought I just had to do it all myself at one point when I was younger, but really leaning on the people who have better understanding and expertise of me, I would say just continue to ask questions and take those marginal, gradual steps to improvement, and don't feel like you have to do everything at once.
Wow, that's a great response, and there was a lot of
Thank
wisdom
you.
in there. That was great. Well, that's all the questions that I have, and I really want to thank you again for joining us. I know you're extremely busy. You probably have to run off to training right after this, but yeah, thank you again. Good luck with the training. Good luck with the national championships coming up in October. Really appreciate you, Grant. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Informs a big part of my life and constantly a part of my life as an athlete, as a coach, and you know, making sure that athletes are making the right decisions on and off the court is so important to me. So I'm really glad to be here with you today and for welcoming me in to speak on this and to share some of my experiences and learned opportunities in my life with all the athletes and people listening onto this.
Great. Well, thanks again. We'll be talking to you again soon.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Thanks, Paul.
Great. Thank you.